Hello and welcome to another manga spotlight. This is No Name by Rafal Jaki and Machine Gamu. I hope I pronounced those names right. This is a brand new series that started off originally as a one-shot under the creators label on Manga Plus. So for anyone who's not familiar with what the creators label is, it's basically non-Japanese manga. And this one started off as a one shot, and I guess it was so popular enough that it's now getting a series. And the creator, I don't know who Machine Gamu is, but Rafal Jaki is actually a CD Projekt Red employee or maybe a freelance. He is responsible for creating the Gwent game, like the actual mini game, and then later the standalone. He's the one that designed Gwent. He's also the one that created and wrote Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the very popular anime. And so No Name is set in a world where names have powers, literally have powers. People gain powers depending on what their names are. And because of that, the government obviously has to get involved. And so now nobody is allowed to name their kids. Instead, the government has to name your kid. And the ones behind this are the Nordic Name Bureau. So basically, when a child is born, the name bureau will come, say what your child's name is, and that will be the quote unquote power that they will get eventually. And we start off with wife about to give birth, and they're talking about what they're going to name their kid. At first, they're like, we can't name the kid because it's against the law. But the wife is like, I don't care what those twats say. Our son, is going to be born any minute, and I will name him. And then that's when a government figure shows up and says that he's from the name bureau. Says, yeah, I'm sure your son will find happiness as a farmer. His name is going to be Yorn, which means farmer. It's an excellent name. So basically, you're pretty much assigned at birth what your job is going to be, which kind of sucks. And that's when we get our two main characters. And we have Ralph and we have Ursula. And they work for the name bureau. And, well, I'll get into my thoughts on them after this little breakdown. So they're on a mission, and their assignment is basically talking to this guy named Bordel. And Bordel is a very influential person. He is friends with the mayor of the city. He is a quote unquote human commander. Like that's what the Bordel name kind of means. And his powers is that he's very good at manipulating people through suggestion. He's very charismatic to the point that he can make people do things against their will just by speaking it. And so his current issue is that his wife has disappeared. That him and his wife were happily married. They were college sweethearts, and she got pregnant, and she had a little bit of depression from the pregnancy. She was thinking about how maybe she didn't want to have a baby. She was looking up stuff on how to get rid of the baby. Trying to use safe terms here. And eventually one day they chatted it out. He thought that they had fixed their issue. But then one day she just disappeared and took the son with her. And he's basically thinking, did she disappear on her own? Was she kidnapped? I need you to find her and bring back her and my son. Ursula questions, why would she run away from you? Like you say you love your wife, why would she run away? And that's when he uses the power to basically order them to go find the son. And so Ursula and Ralph walk out. And as soon as they step out, they realize, hey, he just used his name power on us. And Ralph's like, okay, well, let's focus on the kid and we can report him later. And I'm just thinking, no, you report him now. This dude abused you with his powers. Who knows, if he's going to be abusing his powers in the past or in the future. You report this immediately. I'll get more into this later on, but keep this in mind. So we just have them going around questioning people. At one point, they try to find Kara at her mother's house, but she's not there. And so eventually they come across this caged area, and Ralph uses his power. And his power is that he could create wolves. And so he creates a wolf that he rides to jump over the fence and unlocks the door for Ursula to get in. And eventually they come across the mother-in-law, the mother of the wife. So Kara's mother. She creates a power to which is basically she creates bricks around herself to protect herself. And she's like, stop right there or I'm calling the cops. And they're like, hey, we work for the name bureau. We're trying to find your daughter. What's going on? Kara's mother basically explains that Bordel is not the good husband he betrays himself to be. He is a pig and he's forcing people to do his bidding. And our two characters are like trying to talk her down, like, hey, something happened between your son-in-law and your daughter. We're going to try to protect her, but she kidnapped a child. And the whole city is going to be looking for her tomorrow. So it's better if we knew now what happened. We'll do our best to protect her. And then B is not one that will like mistreat regular folks. We're just here to look out for the betterment of civilians. And he kind of basically guilt trips her by saying that he grew up in the foster care system and several people helped him and he just wants to pay that back. So please put your trust in me. So the grandma takes the two to this little RV hidden away. And that's when Kara comes out with a shotgun. And she basically explains her side of the story. And her side of the story is that she met Bodell in college and it was love at first sight for her. Like she thought he was great. And, he was also kind of like, rich and well off. He had a higher standing than her when it came to the community. And she believed that basically being with him will change her life for the better and get her out of being a low-class citizen. And again, she also like actually cared for him. But then over time, things changed. At first, I would listen to whatever he said, but over time, I started to stand up to him. But the thing is that he's good with his words, so it's not hard to do what he wants. And at first, I never thought he would use his name power on me, but then he did. He did it out of anger, and then I thought, okay, well, maybe he just did it out of anger, but then he kept doing it. There was one point where I said I didn't want to have kids to punish him, to basically show him that I can decide about my own life. And he took that control away from her. So she didn't want to have kids, and he used his power to get her pregnant. There's another way of phrasing that, and that's that he forced himself on her against her will in a manner that, well, if I were to use the actual term, it would probably get this video demonetized, but I'm pretty sure you guys are smart enough to figure out for yourself what he did to her. It's not rocket science, but yeah. So yeah, he used his powers to do that to her. And this guy's a real piece of work, a real monster. Like, this is freaking terrible. Like, this is not something that you do to your wife. Hell, this is not something that you do to anybody. But he did it. And because of that, she got pregnant. And to make things worse, he wants to name the son Bodell, just like him, so that one day he can make a poor girl fall for him and use her like he wants. And of course, Kara's like, I can't let that happen. I won't let that happen. Like, he did that to me. I cannot have that happen to another girl in the future. So when he found out that I wanted to get rid of the kid, he noticed. So I changed tactics, made him seem like, okay, I actually do want the kid to let his guard down. And then once I had the chance, I took the kid and ran. And the plan that Kara has is once the child is old enough to recognize his name, then she can give him a name that will change his life so that he won't have the same powers as his father. It's not just whatever you're named at birth, but it's the name that you have to be familiarized yourself with. So once you recognize what your name is, that's when your powers will activate. So like if someone came and named you Bodell, but then someone else came and named you Ralph before you realized that your name was actually Bodell, you would gain the Ralph powers, if that makes any sense. So she basically wants to keep the child long enough for him to be able to recognize a name that she's going to give him so that his powers will not be the same as his father's. That way he won't do the same crime to someone else that his father did to his mother. And she's like, I only have a small window to give him a different name and get as far away from Bodell as soon as possible. And Ralph's like, well, I think that's all the context that we needed. You know, we'll file this and assign you a safe place where he can't hurt you. And she's like, hey, look, he is very powerful. He has a lot of powerful people in his circle of friends. You going to your bosses isn't going to do anything. It's not going to help me. I just need a few days to disappear. I have people in Poland. I just need you to leave me alone. And I can go somewhere to hide long enough for me to name this kid. I don't see the system that you so trust. Like, I've seen it. It doesn't work. So please just let me disappear for a while. And then that's when Ralph does a stupid thing and says, hey, like, don't you think your kid deserves better? Like, don't let your feelings dictate your future. A name will be approved for young Bodell. And of course, Kara freaks out and says, don't you dare call him that. And that's when she pulls the gun on him, and one of Ralph's wolves dives in the way to take the bullets. Meanwhile, Ursula reveals her power, which is turning into a bear, and she basically is trying to stop Kara. Kara uses her powers, which seems to give her like almost Hulk strength. Like there's one point where she grabs one of Ralph's wolves and swings it with one arm and chucks it at Ursula and knocks her down. And then Kara jumps on Ralph and is about to kill him when Ursula transforms into her human form, pulls out her gun, and shoots Kara dead. And of course, the mother sees this, tries to run away. Ralph stops her and says, please stop fighting me. Like, we're going to help the kid. And then they basically turn in their assignment. They write up the reports, they take the kid in, and it turns out that the system doesn't work because the grandmother is there and she spits on Ursula and basically says, you killed my only daughter, and now my grandson is with that monster. And the two are surprised, right? That's impossible. Like, we filled out the reports, we ensured that I talked to all the right people, and Bodell will face the music and not get the kid. But the grandma's like, you people are just gullible fools. He always gets his way. And so Ralph tries to contact his boss and gets nothing. And that's the end of chapter 1, which is also the one shot. So yeah, the one shot and chapter 1 have the same exact story. It's literally just the one shot, and then chapter 2 immediately follows after that. And so here's what I want to say about this. I like the universe. I think it's pretty cool. It's interesting to see a manga that has like a European setting. It makes sense because it's by non-Japanese people, but still, it's just always unique to see a non-Japanese setting for a manga that's not like an isekai fantasy world. I like the idea behind the whole name thing. Like this is a very unique universe, and I like the idea of having 2 police officers working for this broken system. I do not, however, like these 2 police officers in the sense that they're very incompetent. Like, it's one thing if you want to have police officers working in a broken system and they're trying to work around that system. Maybe they realize the system's faults. Maybe they don't, but they're still trying to do their best. Here, they just seem incompetent for the sake of the story. For example, they know that Bodell is full of garbage because he literally used his powers, force the 2 officers to do what he wanted. Like, as soon as they started questioning him and his relationship with his wife, why would your wife want to leave you? He immediately used his powers to get them to shut up and leave and go find his kid. And they don't do anything about it. They're like, okay, well, we'll report him later instead of reporting him now. And then later on, when they're talking to the wife, when they're talking to Kara, Ralph instigates the situation that causes them to have to shoot her. She literally straight up tells you, like, hey, this dude abused me in a sexual manner. He forced himself on me to get me pregnant so that he could have a son, so that he can name the son Bodell, and so that the son can follow in his footsteps. I ran away from that effed up situation, and I'm trying to protect my kid. And I'm trying to protect future girls out there by giving my kid a different name, by making sure he doesn't get raised by this monster. And then Ralph's like, okay, well, we're going to take your kid anyways, and we're going to bring it to the name bureau, and we'll try to, maybe we'll try to fix the situation. And then he calls the kid Bodell. Like, he says, young Bodell. When you know that that's why the mom took the kid, is to make sure that that's not what he gets named. And so the situation gets escalated because of their incompetence. So it's very hard to root for these characters because these are literally 2 cops who, whether you're a pro cop or not, there are people out there that are very anti-cop. So if you want to do cop characters, you have to kind of walk a thin line to make them sympathetic because there's already people out there where as soon as they see, oh, these are cops, they're immediately against them. So you're already kind of fighting an uphill battle with that. And then you make their incompetence result in the death. I hate having to self-censor myself because of YouTube, but a grape victim. Get rid of the G. So your incompetence led to the death of a grape victim. So now you're already like 0 for 2. Like, that's strike 2. And there are better ways of doing this. You could have had a situation where they basically are trying to work with the mom, and then they realize, okay, you know what? Maybe we should hide the mom and the kid long enough for the kid to get a different name. maybe we should just let her go to her family in Poland. And so they tried to let the kid and the mom escape, but then eventually the kid and mom get captured. And then maybe the name bureau questions them like, hey, we had you on this assignment. Why did other officers capture her instead of you? And they could like, maybe try to lie or whatever, or maybe they come clean and then they get reprimanded for it. Something like that. Or maybe it could have just been a completely different situation. Like you could have two cops who are competent and they still failed because the system is so against them. And so now that's like, okay, well, we're trying, the whole story can be like, okay, we believe the system is a failure. And we're trying to work within it because we're trying to do the best that we can within this broken system. But maybe we should just not even bother trying. And so it can be this whole thing of like, what do they do now? Do they just give up? Do they keep trying to see if they can change the system from within? Like that can be a whole thing. But instead, we have incompetent cops working for a very corrupt system, and terrible things happen to good people because of that. And then it's just kind of like, well, why would I want to root for these guys then? Like they're literally the reason why a woman who was assaulted by her husband gets killed and then has her son that was birthed from that assault get taken away and then given to the person that assaulted her in the first place. So yeah, this terrible victim just has this horrible situation forced on her, literally forced on her. And then she's the one that gets killed. Meanwhile, the one that did the forcing gets everything that he wants in the end. Because of the incompetence of these two characters that we're supposed to be rooting for. Yeah, that's my biggest problem with this series. The next chapter, because that's chapter 1, and then chapter 2, I'm not going to go into it too much, but we kind of switch tactics to the characters are now trying to find, it's like a murder mystery dealing with the terrorist attack. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I would have liked it better if you got rid of chapter 1 and just started with that. Like chapter 1 can just be the pilot one shot that's no longer canon, but people can go read it if they just want to see how the series started. Because you get that a lot. Well, you'll get like a pilot manga chapter, and then if it does well enough, then it gets its own series. But then when it gets its own series, it will like change the characters, or change story stuff. Like go look at Naruto and go look at what Naruto originally was going to be compared to what it ended up being. It's completely different. So you'll get stuff like that. You could have done something like that with this, where you have these characters and they're competent police officers and they're trying to solve a murder mystery involving a person being able to blow up, but their name doesn't make sense because their name doesn't have anything to do with explosions. And so now they're trying to stop this terrorist attack and trying to discover, okay, how does this whole name situation fit into this? Like that could have been a great way to start off the characters. And then you have them being competent. You don't have to have them solve the mystery right in the beginning, but you can see them like piecing together evidence and clues that maybe other officers have missed. And that could have been a good way to introduce these characters. But instead, you introduce these characters straight up as just incompetent police officers that their stupidness leads to the death of an innocent mother, an innocent woman who had a terrible situation forced on her. And then she's the one that gets killed. Her son gets taken away, given to the person that abused her. And now that abuser is going to groom the son to do that same thing to other innocent women. That's what you gave us instead. And it's all because of our main characters. If our main characters were just a little bit smarter, just a little bit more competent, none of this would have happened. But because they are completely stupid, they completely escalated the situation to what we have now. And so, yeah, I would have completely changed that. Outside of that, I mean, the artwork is freaking fantastic. And the story itself is interesting. Like, if I were to just ignore chapter 1, chapter 2 is a lot better. Even the characters themselves for chapter 1 can be kind of interesting. Everything up to them escalating the situation and forcing the mom to attack them was good and interesting. It's just, I don't like that portion of the story. I don't like that portion of the chapter. I don't like what it resulted in. And I don't like the fact that nothing was done. They completely screwed up this family's life forever, and nothing is going to be done about it. And now we're just moving on to the next case. And it's like, well, I can't root for you guys. Like, you guys are terrible people. You're not terrible because you're trying to be terrible. You're terrible because you're stupid. And It's one thing to like root for a stupid character. A lot of manga series have like, you know, your naive, stupid shonen protagonist. It's fine. But if your stupid shonen protagonist leads to something like this, leads to the death of a woman who's been abused in this way, it's especially on the very first chapter. This is like your introductory chapter to these characters. It's very hard to root for that character going into the future because that's always going to be a black spot on their history. Again, this is the way you introduce these characters to us. This is our very first impression of them. And our very first impression of them is they're incompetent, they're stupid, they get abused by the dad. And then rather than doing anything about it, their incompetency leads to the victim, the actual victim, being killed and her son being given back to the person that abused her so that he can groom the son. So I feel like I'm kind of rambling on this too much. I will say I'll keep an eye on this one. I mean, it's by the person who did Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which is really good. So I want to give this person, you know, a chance. I want to give Raphael Jockey a chance when it comes to writing No Name. Second chapter was a lot better than the first one in that regard, and like even in the world building and stuff like that. And just then I prefer that you know, murder mystery way more than I prefer the assignment in chapter one. Chapter one leaves a lot to be desired. I feel like it's just a very, very huge misstep in the way that you handled the characters here. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on No Name. If you've read it, what do you think? And I hope to see you next time. Take care. Later. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I still want to thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next one is more to your liking. With that said, thank you once again, and I hope you guys and gals have a good one. Later.